Well, good evening. It's wonderful to be here in Shelton with you all tonight. Almost didn't make it out of Bremerton with all the traffic jams. It's so nice to be in Shelton where we don't have to worry about all that, except when it's bad, and then it's very, very bad. Thank you to the candidates for being here this evening. It's always wonderful to hear you and to spend time with you, so thank you for your time. So I'm a teacher, right? So that means I get to give classroom rules. And I love to do that here with you. So here's the rules, pretty simple. Each of you will get a minute to introduce yourselves. And then we're going to open up for questions. And we have some questions that have been provided already by League of Women Voters as well as other folks. So if you do have candidate questions, there are pieces of paper around, pens, and we want to encourage you to get those questions ready. Then, somewhere around 8 o'clock, maybe later, if the conversation has really gotten exciting and there's lots of questions and information to learn, then we'll go later than 8. We can do that. But that's kind of what we're thinking at this point, just for a tentative plan. And because we have Tracy Moore, who is not here, Janet Rogerson has been very kind in providing a statement for Tracy, but we are not going to abuse Janet's hospitality by having her answer questions for Tracy. So that means that Kathy McDowell and Janet for Tracy will not be responding to questions. However, Ginger, you're open, right?
Sure.
Okay. And Jay and Christy, you're fair game.
Of course.
All right. Sounds good. All right. So why don't we start with Ginger and kind of introduce yourself. And generally we would say about 1 minute, but we're actually not going to be mean tonight and like call you off stage or anything. So, all right. You're on.
Right here? Do you want me to just sit or do you want this to stand? Just what you use. Okay. I really would like to thank all of you for having me here tonight, especially since I'm running unopposed. I told my family if I can't win this year, I'm going to give up. I have been in Shelton my entire life. We won't go into the details about how long that is. I went to school here. I went to school in Mountain View. I graduated from Shelton High School. I was born actually in the old hospital. I now live across from the new hospital. So I don't venture very far. I love this community. I love it here. I love the people. And I'm so thrilled that I'm able to serve in this capacity. I worked for Sprouse Rights for 16 years and as manager for the Tumwater store for 7 of those years before I went to work for the clerk's office in 1987. I was 10. So in 1987, I became a file clerk. And in 1991, I became the chief deputy. And in November of 2012, I was appointed to take Pat Swartos' place when she retired after 40 years. I have really enjoyed the whole process, and I've enjoyed the office. If I can just take a very brief moment to explain to you what the office is. We are the clerk of the court for Mason County. We are the keeper of the record. Every record that goes through Mason County courts, through the Superior Court, I should say, not the District Court, is kept in our office for eternity in one form or another. We have records from all the way back to the 1800s. So that's our main concern. We're also the financial officer for Superior Court. So whenever someone pays a fine or a fee and restitution checks need to be cut, that's what we do. We accept money into the registry of the court and hold on to it until disputes can be figured out and an agreement can come to or a judge makes a decision. We take care of criminal matters, civil matters, including domestic violence. We take care of domestic matters, which are divorces, paternities, non-parental custody issues, probates, guardianships, juvenile offenders, and dependencies. So that's what we do in our office. And also we are in charge of the jury for the entire county at this point. We've just taken that recently over. So.
Good. Thank you very much. Jay Hupp.
I'm Jay Hupp. I'm running for re-election to the Port of Shelton Commission. My background started out in Centralia. I basically grew up in Lewis County, spent 20 years in the military driving airplanes for the Navy, and then I retired to Mason County in 1981. And I've been active both business-wise and in politics in Mason County ever since. My focus has been primarily on business development and economic development, job development as a result of business development. 14 years with the Economic Development Council in a paid position, and a number of years on the Planning Commission, the Shoreline Advisory Board, and a number of other civic involvements. My background, my motivation, and the accomplishments that I take credit for in this community over the last 25 years just happen to fit perfectly with the mission of the Port. The Port's mission is to take taxpayer dollars out of the Port Taxing District, invest those dollars in infrastructure and facilities, make those facilities available to businesses so that they can grow and prosper, and the ultimate objective is job creation. So it takes tax dollars and turns them into jobs, and that's the objective. Not only does my background and my motivation fit me perfectly for involvement for policy making at the Port of Shelton, but there's another item that has come up in the last 2 years that is really deep in my guts, and that's the preservation of this fairgrounds. I've committed myself to the preservation of those fairgrounds where they sit, not because I believe that those fairgrounds should be there in perpetuity for the simple reason that they are there, but for the simple reason that I believe if those fairgrounds are taken out of existence, that they're never going to be replaced. The replacement is a horrendously expensive issue for this community, and I intend to fight against that.
Thank you. Christy Buck.
Great. Hi, I'm Christy Buck. I'm a second-generation lifelong resident of Mason County. My grandparents came here in 1929. My grandfather was a city council member in the 50s, and so I kind of grew up hearing about that and thinking that was an exciting opportunity to maybe follow in his footsteps a little bit. I'm currently the owner of the John L. Scott franchise in downtown Shelton. I've been a realtor for about a little more than 10 years. Before that, I was worked at Simpson Timber Company for 16 years, and before that, Hood Canal State Bank, if anybody can remember that name. I moved up at Simpson from entry-level positions to middle management when I left there, and then when I decided to sell real estate, that was an entrepreneurial spirit in me that just came alive that wanted to do that. And I haven't looked back. It's been a fabulous change. I'm current chair of the Economic Development Council Board of Directors. I've been on that board for about 7 years. I've been the chair last year and this year. I've told them that I will not chair again next year, so hopefully there'll be someone else that can step up to that. I'd sure like to still be on that board, but I certainly learned a whole other world that I didn't even know existed about the economic development part of a county and the community. So that's been a great eye-opener for a training grounds for public service. I'm also a current member of the Planning Advisory Committee for Mason County, so we have been on that for about 2.5, 3 years. We vet land use issues for the county. We make recommendations about zoning changes and policy changes that go to the county. We do a lot of serious, hard work at that committee. We are currently looking through the Shoreline Master Plan, line by line by line, actually seeing the unintended consequences of everything that's in that and the things that will affect the property owners of waterfront and critical areas in Mason County. So I have a really good understanding of that. That really challenges your brain, but at the end of a 3-hour session on twice a month on that, I go home pretty energized with the changes that we've made that are for the good of Mason County. I was on the Board of Realtors for almost 10 years, and so that's given me some board experience there too, the president for 1 year. I've been married for almost 25 years to my husband, Jim. We live out the Cloqualum Road with our Labrador Retrievers, and I'm a Rotarian, and I consider myself to be a super communication and a coalition builder. So I'm running for public office because I think that I can make a difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Kathy McDowell?
I'm Kathy McDowell, and thank you for inviting us here tonight. We appreciate it. I was born and raised in Shelton. Grew up in the school district. Went to grade school, Bordeaux School. Went to the high school. Graduated from Shelton High School. Married my little time high school sweetheart, and moved to Bellingham. Was there 6 years. Came back. Moved to the county. Then moved back into the city. I've been living in the city for about 27 years. I've worked for the city. Well, I managed a theater for 5 years, our nice theater we have downtown that we all love to go to. I managed that for 5 years, and then I moved over to the city to a little entity of itself, the Event Specialist Department, and I've been working there for 14 years. I've learned probably every problem to solve has come through that building on an event night or day or evening or afternoon or morning. I've probably met every single person in the city of Shelton and has shook their hands as they come through. And I've had to deal with problems that some people would throw their hands in the air and say, I can't figure this one out. I've learned to deal with them and figure them out, and that is one reason I feel that I would make a good commissioner for the city of Shelton, because I have great problem-solving skills. I've been working with children for 25 plus years, and so I kind of feel like I might be good at this job. And I've been married 41 years, and I have 4 children and 3 grandchildren. And I just been knocking at my door the last few years to get involved in city government, and I just stepped forward, and this is the way to do it. Just step forward and say you're going to put your foot in and go for it. So that's what I've done. I have some issues that are important to me as going in as a commissioner. The city budget is a bothersome thing for me right now. Quite a lot of money that we deal with and that we owe, and I can't guarantee anything about getting it under control, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to try hard to do this. I also, we've promised the citizens of Shelton that we are going to pave their streets, and we do see streets being paved, so that's another issue that I'm going to keep working at, to get these streets paved. Bring industry and jobs into Shelton, keep industry and jobs here. We grow our city, we have a tax base, and guess what? We have money to pave our streets. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Janet Rogerson for Tracy Moore.
Good evening. I'm not very good at mimicking Tracy's voice, but she has prepared a statement for me to read to you, so please bear with me. She starts with an intro where she says, "Thank you so much to the Mason County chapter of the League of Women Voters for providing this opportunity to the candidates. I've been looking forward to this event, but I feel I must demonstrate my commitment to protecting the health, safety, and welfare of our community by avoiding spreading this virus to the other candidates and the members of the audience. Thank you for allowing my statement read as part of the forum." So here's Tracy's statement. I have been committed to and an advocate for this community for over 20 years. I know that decisions made and the direction taken at this time in Shelton will shape our future. Now is the time to look forward, to believe in what we can be, and to choose our identity. I believe we can attract residential and business growth by building on the positive attributes we have. We have to be bold and insist on making proactive decisions that will be an incentive for new and continued investment. We have to make ourselves attractive to investors. As a commissioner, I will lead efforts to embrace the potential of our waterfront and work to incorporate it into our downtown. Let's explore business opportunities that will connect the downtown to the marina and attract tourism dollars. We are a logging town. Let's encourage the world to visit and see what a working waterfront looks like. I will work to provide directional signage with maps on Highway 101 that designate Olympic Highway North and South as Business Downtown Scenic Loop. We will bring more outside dollars into our downtown and the Olympic Highway Business Corridor if travelers are aware they can easily get back on the major highway. I will support efforts to make our community safer by promoting funding for neighborhood and community watch groups, and I will work to find funding for more streetlights in our neighborhoods. I will also push to keep code enforcement and nuisance laws in effect to protect residential property values. Citizens will be more likely to invest in their homes if they feel their neighborhoods are secure. I will work to keep an experienced grant writer on staff so we can take advantage of funding for important community-enhancing projects such as safe routes to school. I will support the efforts of those working on poverty and homelessness in our community and encourage all sectors of the community to become involved. I will be available to the public by establishing a regular meet and greet for communication of ideas and concerns. Our city has a wealth. Oh, I didn't quite make it. Well, I'll give you her final sentence, and that is, she's ready to serve as your commissioner. Shelton needs more.
Thank you very much. So now we'll begin with some questions. And this is a call for more questions. So Ginger, this first question is for you. What is the greatest need for improvement at the clerk's office? And apparently you don't get to just say more money. That's what this question said, so there you go.
Well, we have a couple of rather large needs. One of them would be more space to be able to do the jobs properly. But even beyond that, we need to start taking care of archiving some of the records that we already have, because, like I said before, we have to keep these things forever, and of course space runs out, and space is probably our largest concern. We need to make some more room upstairs if we can, find some more room wherever we can, and work on some different methods. We are right now scanning all of our documents, so that's the new technical way we can help in this, and we've been doing that since 2002. But we have older records upstairs, and we still need to deal with some of those older records. So that's a big concern for us, because we do have to keep those indefinitely.
Thank you very much. So Jay and Christy, I hope you're prepared, because there's a little stack building for you. This question is for both of you, and Jay will let you begin, and then Christy, you can respond to the same question. 2 minutes each. Mm-hmm. Both candidates for the Port Commission seat, the incumbent and the challenger, are known to support keeping the fairgrounds. Can you briefly outline what you have done so far and what your plans of action are to keep the fairgrounds in light of the present Port mindset to immediately raise the facility?
Well, what I've done has been pretty obvious to this community, I think. About 2 years ago, I saw that the attitude towards demolishing those fairgrounds was becoming entrenched in the Port Commission and the staff out there. And so I began to push for a written statement out of the Seattle office to find out exactly what it was that their problem was that was causing those fairgrounds to be moved in the direction of demolition. That caused a rather violent reaction out of Seattle and solidified the attitudes amongst the three commissioners, I being in the minority now. At that time that it was solidified, I was in the majority. There was another commissioner that was voting in my direction. That's changed. So knowing that there was very little likelihood of a change in heart within the commission itself, I went to Washington, D.C. I went direct to the Secretary of Transportation. I wrote him a letter, and I said, I didn't say Dear Ray, Ray LaHood, but I did say that there's a situation here in Mason County that makes no sense. It makes no sense for the FAA. It makes no sense for the community. It makes no sense for the health of that airport. And my real fear is that if those fairgrounds are demolished, it will cause such a negative attitude within this community towards that airport that airport will eventually suffer from it. That's my real concern. People think I'm only focused on saving the fairgrounds. I'm focused on saving that airport out there and saving it from a reaction that I'm afraid might come as a result of tearing those fairgrounds down. And I'm going to fight to stop it.
I think there's been a misconception that I'm for saving the fairgrounds where they are. I'm for saving the fair in Mason County and Oysterfest. But I believe, from everything that I've read, that the fairgrounds needs to move and relocate. I've researched all of the articles, the letters. I think we've been hearing this for 15 years from the FAA, that they consider that space incompatible use to an airport and the fly zones. I've talked with a representative from the FAA regional office who says that that is their position as far as he understands. In every meeting he's been in where Sanderson Field has been talked about, it's been the opinion of the group there that we need to consider the thought of moving our fairgrounds to somewhere else. I also think we can deserve better. I think that we deserve better than 55-year-old buildings that are falling down around us. And I think that the county needs to come together. The 60,000 people in residents in the county need to have a fair that serves all of them, not just the 13,000 voters and taxpayers in the Port District that need to provide those buildings for you. I believe that it's a county issue, and I want to lead that discussion with the county to figure out where we can have it, what we can do about it. I believe that the FAA has been pretty clear that as long as we can get a plan going in the right direction, that they may let us lease that. I can't say that they will, but they may let us lease those grounds for the next couple years and keep them. I don't believe that anybody at the port is going to January 3rd start tearing those buildings down. Regardless of what you're hearing, I don't think anybody's going to plan to do that right away. I think that's in a plan for the next 10 years because I believe that the FAA has been telling us for 15 years that the fairgrounds needs to move off of that property. When I talk to people about the idea of keeping it there in any way that we could, there's the idea of eminent domain coming up and saying that it could be given back over to the county for its use. And I think that if we start going down that path, I believe we're going to hear roadblock after roadblock after roadblock about doing that. And at the end of the day, I don't want my taxpayer money to go to pay for buying that land. Thank you. She's telling me I have to stop.
So we're going to come back to Jay here for a minute. 2 minutes, actually. Explain what a foreign trade zone is and what its benefits are to the Port of Shelton.
Foreign trade zone as opposed to a free trade zone. Foreign trade zones they became popular in the United States back in the 1930s, and they're primarily set up as if you can think of an island offshore that is actually part of the U.S. territory, but it would be treated as if it were a foreign territory. The intent is to bring goods into those ports or those foreign trade zones and create jobs through assembly of manufactured goods. They're very common in fact, every auto manufacturer in the world has a foreign trade zone located someplace in the United States. The largest one that was just closed down was down in Oakland, California, was Toyota's. But that's the objective of the foreign trade zone. Now, how does that apply to the Port of Shelton? About 20 years ago now, I, along with a half a dozen other people, were instrumental in creating Foreign Trade Zone 216, which is sponsored by the Port of Olympia, and it encompasses 5 counties, and it's the largest trade zone in the United States. The opportunity there is for, again, manufacturers to import goods, take those goods into the foreign trade zone, produce a manufactured product from jobs that are available, or create jobs in the creation of the product, and then turn those goods into commerce. The duty is not paid on either the import or the sale until the goods are actually introduced into the U.S. commerce. Now, all of this has been somewhat superseded by NAFTA and GATT in opening up the borders. So how effective foreign trade zones are today as opposed to what they might have been 20 years ago or what they have been 50, 60, 70 years ago, it's kind of questionable.
Thank you.
Obviously, Jay, I have to give it to you. You certainly have a lot more information and many years behind you that talk about foreign trade zones. He pretty much laid it all out exactly what they are. I think there's always benefit if you can attract people because you have a foreign trade zone in order to bring a manufacturing job or whatever to the area. I think that's worthwhile doing. But its effectiveness over time, I believe, has been diminished somewhat. And so I think that's an interesting question, and I don't really have an answer for it tonight.
Well, here's one that you might have an answer for. Okay, and this one's for you, Christy. Okay. So the question from the audience, how will you be independent and represent all interests, given your background as a realtor? Has that influenced your relationships to certain community members, organizations, individuals?
Oh, I appreciate that question, whoever asked that. Thank you very much. I think I have shown a broad, a diverse group of people that I belong to. Like I said, I'm a Rotarian, so I represent Rotarians when I'm doing Rotary work, humanitarian efforts. I'm a realtor, so I do realtor work, and I have backgrounds in marketing and presentation work and negotiation skills and things that I bring to the table as a realtor. I belong to a church, so I have a church affiliation group. I belong to the Economic Development Council, so oftentimes my hat runs back and forth when I'm talking to people from a realtor perspective to an Economic Development Council chair perspective to a planning commission where I represent the whole county in trying to make decisions that are good for the whole entire county. So I think I've shown many times that I can change my representation group and bring strengths that I have for all areas. And I fully understand that as a port commissioner, I will represent the constituents of the port district. Yet still at the same time realizing that the port is a part of a player that we also have to play with the city and the county. And I think all of us have to come together and build some coalitions and some communication between us so that we can all get on the same page about where we want to bring Mason County. But certainly I don't think I've ever had a history of representing a particular group to an end where I would be someone that anybody would ever say had a single-minded vision, and I have no agenda to push in any one particular direction. You'll also find that I'm someone who likes to hear all the sides to a story. I've been, to a fault sometimes, people often say that they gave me advice and I didn't follow it because I listened to other people that didn't think that was something that they wanted to do. And so I tend to be someone who likes to listen to all sides of a story and come to a conclusion that will benefit the right people at the right time. So as a whole, thank you.
Thank you. Jay, this question will start with you, but Christy will also be asking you the same question. If elected, what would you make your number one environmental priority and why?
The number one environmental priority for the port, that's a really tough question because the port pays so much attention to the subject of environmental protection, not only through the regulatory environment that we operate under, but the daily focus on making sure that when projects are done out there, they're environmentally correct and sustainable in the future. So to answer that specifically, I don't have a particular project that I would focus on, with the exception of I objected vociferously to the harvesting of the 100 acres of timber that happened on Johns Prairie earlier this year and late last year. The reason I objected to that was because that timber was not mature, contrary to the briefings that have been given to the Commission, and that timber was gaining in value more by standing there than cutting it down and putting the money in the bank. Beyond that, that timber was an asset that was intended, when the Commission first bought the 400 acres out at Johns Prairie, to be turned piecemeal, bit by bit, into developments where as a business would come in and would want to locate, and you would have timber standing there that would be worth enough money to convert the property to a lot that was usable. That's not true today. There's 100 acres of timber, there's a 100-acre stump farm out there that I didn't like, I don't like, and the money is not available to convert that to a business lot if somebody should want to come in and do that. Now, we are faced with exactly the same thing happening to Sanderson Field right now, 137 acres. it appears that a decision has been made, again, against my argument, to take down all of the timber, all of the marketable timber on Sanderson Field. And for the same reasons that I just gave, I absolutely reject the thought of cutting that timber down simply to stick the money in the bank. And that's my one environmental issue.
Thank you. Christy, can you respond to that same question?
Sure. Can you read it again one more time?
If elected, what would you make your number one environmental priority and why?
It is difficult to do number one environmental priority because I think it would be hard to put one higher than the other. I think you always have water issues. So we have a marina that we maintain. We have issues with water problems down there. Not necessarily problems, but issues that are always should be top of the mind of the port is what are those boathouses doing to that environment down there, making sure that we're meeting all of the requirements and regulations that we have of what's going on down there, keeping control of that. We also always have air quality issues that we should be concerned with. If we're an economic driver and someone that's bringing in economic new business and new industry, if you will, or jobs creation up there at the port, we have to always be concerned with air quality issues as well. So I think it would be difficult for anyone to say what's more important, water, or air, or groundwater contamination. I think there's definitely things we have to worry about with there. And of course, if you run an airport, you have noise issues to deal with too that are part of air quality. So I think all of those things have to come into play, and you have to weigh all of those things in every decision that you make. So trying to pick one over the other would be difficult to do.
Thank you very much. So Jay, back to you. And this one is for you, but Christy, you'll have a different question. So Jay, during your 14 years as a port commissioner, what businesses have been developed? And this says post-Walmart in Mason County. And the second part of that question is what types of businesses would you be working to attract?
Well, first off, my 14 years was with the Economic Development Council. I've only been a port commissioner for 6, but as long as you ask the question of 14 years, I'll back up that far. The types of businesses that my fingerprints are on in a positive manner start with businesses like Techwood, which at one time had an employment up to 65. I think they're down around 40 now. Sims Vibration, Limb Savers. The various aspects and versions that Certified Aerospace has gone through, and the occupation of those businesses those buildings since the 1960s in aviation fabrication. Currently, the most current business out there, TrueFab. I certainly had a hand in bringing that together a couple of years ago. Masks, which is a business that is run by a gent by the name of James Thomas. That's a medical device manufacturer. The types of businesses that, and I'll also mention that the 2 mills that are out at Johns Prairie that are currently operated by Simpson Timber Company. Actually, the mills themselves belong to the port. The port inherited them after Mason County Forest Products came up here from Lewis County. I personally recruited that business from Lewis County. Those mills are out there because of what I did. I'll take credit for that, and a number of other things. Now, what would I focus on at the development the port? The same things that I've focused on for the last 6 years. When we went into this recession and really cut off with a cliff in 2007, we were at about 600 employees at businesses that operated on port property. That dropped down to about 2/3 of that figure. We've worked it back up to that. And it's a variety of businesses, that go all the way from manufacturing, heavy manufacturing, to light manufacturing, to not so much retail, but very light manufacturing. So the diversification of whatever it is that creates jobs in Mason County, I'm on it, and I love it.
Thank you very much. So then the question for you, Christy, and do we need to take a minute here to figure out what the buzzing is?
Try that one. Okay. Can you hear? Oh, there it stopped.
There we go.
Can you hear this one okay? Okay.
So Christy, then given Jay's response, the question for you is, how would you be a better port commissioner than those presently holding office? And again, what businesses would you be working to attract to come to Mason County?
Okay. Well, I think for one thing, I'm definitely a super communicator, which just means that I like to communicate in a manner that everybody understands. I think I like to speak plainly, and I'm definitely a listener. I don't get offended by things people say. I want to keep the vision of the county in the forefront and keep the egos out of the way and the issues that we see happen. It happens on many different ports and places, and I think if we can focus on solving the problem for our county instead of solving the problem between people, I think that we can get a lot better way. I think if we can just deal with people as people and realize that we don't need to have agendas, we need to get our egos out of the way, we need to try to do what's best for our county as a public servant. And so I think that will put me in a better spot, that I can hopefully be a coalition builder, somebody that can communicate and bring in together our county commissioners and foster an environment of, instead of us versus you, or we want to do this and you're not working with us, I think let's try to identify the problems and work together to figure them out. And so I think in every place that I've worked and done, I think that my reputation will stand for that I'm someone that builds relationships up rather than tears them down. So the second part of that was what kind of businesses?
Do you have some ideas about what businesses you might attract?
Nothing really in particular, other than I don't want them to be just, minimum wage stuff where there's no future for anybody. I'd love to see us get some stuff where we can quit exporting our kids to another county to work. I want us to have jobs that are family earning wages, that have some benefits with them, that have some pride in their work, some positive things into our society. So I don't know if it's tech industry. I don't know if it's parts manufacturing for Boeing. I don't know if it's something with communications or public power. We'll have to work through each of them as we get to them. So I don't have a specific niche where I want to focus. I want to be broad-minded and take whatever comes our way. Encourage an entrepreneurial spirit.
Thank you very much. So from the audience, those are the last questions that we've received, but we'd like to open it up. And we have about 10 minutes to do that. So if there is a question that you have and you haven't gotten it here in writing, this is a good opportunity.
There's some more in writing.
Christy, if we were to relocate the fairgrounds, it could probably be done in a really beautiful way. But how would we afford that? How would we motivate the people in Mason County when we have so many needs? How would we be able to afford to build the new fairgrounds and convention center, which we desperately need?
Right. I think it can be a number of different ways. I think that if we get all on the same page, I think we will find more resources than we think we have. I think there's some big, some families in town, some big employers in town who are interested in possibly sponsoring a building, so that they would buy one that has their name on it for our community. I think there's some talk about a whole bunch of effort of things donated for land clearing and building. I think we've got a lot of families that have some great families in this area with some roots that go back many years. And I think there's a lot of those folks that are going to help come forward. I also think the economy is going to get better. I think we're at that verge of an increase of things, so our revenues will become greater. It's not certainly something that's going to happen overnight, no doubt about that. But I think we can put it together if we have the will to. So I think there's many ways we can finance something like that.
Thank you. Did you want to ask your question?
I have the same question.
Oh, same question.
Yeah, I was asking the same.
Any other questions? Good.
So my question, I think, is for both of you. It's about different types of industry, and a lot of the industries don't coexist with each other, where one requires certain type of an environment, the other one puts into the environment, and therefore can't coexist. What type of a focus or plan will you do to make sure that the industries that you're attracting aren't ones that make it so other industries won't come here. So, I mean, like software companies don't want to come and sit next to a smokestack. That's an example. Okay.
So Jay, do you want to start that response?
Actually, that's been one of my great frustrations in the last 6 years. The two things that I wanted to accomplish when I first ran for this position out at the port was, number one, to open up communications not only within the organization but communications between the port and the community. That went forward fairly well for the first year. The second point was that I wanted to get back into the planning process and take a good hard look at where the Port of Shelton was planning to be and how it intended to be there, and marry those compatibilities with each other and exclude those non-compatibilities in a well-thought-out plan. Those two intentions, after the first year, were kind of derailed by some things that the port got into and got itself wrapped up in that currently are still in the same kinds of difficulties. But I've had a great deal of difficulty in not being able to get back into the comprehensive plan and really work out a plan of going after the types of businesses, citing the types of businesses, and locating the types of businesses that are compatible with each other. My objective would be the same objective that I had in 2007, to get back in and create that plan and make it happen. The way that port is operating today is like Topsy grew up, and I don't like it.
I think that's an interesting thing. I appreciate your question to think about. I think we have so much land use things in place already. There's so many different plans and pieces and parts of the Growth Management Act and the Ports Master Plan and the county's regulations, and I think it's so difficult to mesh them all together. And so, but I also am not someone who wants to close the door to we can't. I don't want to ever talk to anybody about that kind of business because we want to have only this kind of business. So I don't know that I'm in a position at this point to say that I will only want to attract a certain kind or disqualify a certain kind. I think they will all have their merits when we see a plan together. And at this point, I think we're ready with infrastructure to be attracting whatever we can attract. So I think we need to start. I mean, it'd be nice if we had so many people to pick from that we have to pick and choose. But I think at this point, our county just needs some jobs and some stuff going on. So I think that is it's certainly a topic that requires some thoughtful thinking, though. I appreciate you bringing it up.
Thank you. So we have another question.
Jay, we heard Christy's feelings about moving the fairgrounds. What is your assessment of the feasibility of moving the county fairgrounds?
My feeling is that this community has been trying to locate its fairgrounds for 108 years. It's been working intensely on it, and what they finally located out of Shelton Valley onto the property where it exists today in 1963 is the best that this community could do out of 108 years, and I'm not a bit ashamed of it. If you want to improve the condition of those buildings out there and those facilities out there, I would suggest that you take the money that is apparently available drifting around out there for a new fairgrounds and focus on upgrading what you've got. You could do it for a lot less money and you could do a lot more. One of the things that frustrates me about the situation that we're dealing with now is that the facility that sits out there, as we inherited the buildings from the county when they dropped their lease 4 years ago, those facilities are a cash cow waiting to be milked. All the port has to do is figure out how to do it. Now, if the port were to move in a direction that would cause the FAA to back off, which I truly believe can be done, I think it could be not only motivated out of the Port Commission to cause the FAA to back off, but I think it could come out of this community as a voice of community political force to our congressional delegation that would come down on the FAA and cause the FAA to move in a more reasonable direction. If you take the regulations that the FAA operates under, the compliance manual is about that thick. And within that compliance manual, believe me, I've read it cover to cover. I understand both sides of the issue. And if I were either in my position or the FAA administrator's position in Seattle, I could argue this question in either direction until you would all close the door and walk away, because those regulations are written in a manner that allows the reasonable thing to happen both for the airport and for the community.
Another question.
I guess this is mainly for you, Christy. Suppose the money were there to build new facilities for the fairgrounds. Where would you put it?
The fairgrounds?
Yes, where would you locate it other than where it is now?
I think that would be a county decision. I think it would be, if we're going to move it off the port's property, then it no longer becomes a port issue. And so the county can decide it wherever they want to put it, which is actually, in the county's provision in the Growth Management Act to provide a fair for its constituents. And so I believe that would, I certainly wouldn't want to speak for the county about where they might want to put it. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities. People are talking about some property by the new Public Works building. And so that's what I've heard coming up over and over again, that there's some property that the county has talked about having that be the port, the port or the fairgrounds property. But I can't speak for the county about where they would like to locate their fairgrounds. So
I'm going to bring these questions to a close as we head towards the 8 o'clock hour. It's been our tradition that we allow the candidates to provide a 1-minute close. Janet, we usually start on the opposite end, so this might be your opportunity to finish the statement from
Yes.
Tracy Moore.
Is this working? Yes. Well, this is a nice surprise. I think I was going through a number of bulleted items that Tracy had said she will do, and I'll just pick up from those. Thank you. I will work to keep an experienced grant writer on staff so we can take advantage of funding for important community-enhancing projects such as Safe Routes to School. I'll support the efforts of those who work to solve the issues of poverty and homelessness in the community and encourage public involvement. I will be available to the public by establishing meet and greet time for communication of ideas and concerns. I will look to other cities for successful ideas and programs that we can incorporate into our plans for Shelton's future success. We can accomplish great things in our community if we work together. With your help, I am ready to lead us to great things and to serve as your commissioner.
Thank you very much. And Kathy McDowell?
I plan to, elected as a commissioner, I plan to keep my promises, keep the promises that were made to the citizens to get projects done in the city. These projects need to get done that makes our city stronger, more viable city, and a city that people want to visit when we have these things that we have promised as a city for years to fix. And so that's what I'm going to work on. Thank you.
Christy Buck?
when they told us today that we only had a minute to write an intro and a wrap-up, that's pretty difficult to tell a real estate agent. So I wrote out my minute. So thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I'm optimistic that we're on the brink of greatness here in Mason County, and I want to be part of that coalition building. We can now market the port's properties with the recent infrastructure improvements, water and sewer out there. I want to work to build relationships with the county and the city commissions, the Fair Board, the Chamber of Commerce, the Skookum Rotary, and all of the other players around here to form our vision for the fairgrounds together. But on a bigger scale, the future of our community as we move forward. We have a lot to offer. It's time for some input from someone of my generation. We need to nurture the port's current tenants, encourage them to grow and expand, meet their needs, market the port's properties to a greater audience, and solve our fairgrounds issue together. Thank you very much for your vote.
And Jay Hub?
I don't think I have to tell anybody in this community that knows me that I have a reputation of taking a stand on issues for the betterment of the community over and over and over again, and not being bashful about that stand, and not being quiet when some others would say, sit down and shut up, Jay. If I'm reelected, you can expect out of me what you've seen out of me in the past. And I'll stand on a platform of personal pride for businesses that are in this community, businesses that have been helped in this community, and jobs that have been created in this community because of what I do and the way that I do it. Now, I've heard a suggestion over and over again for the last 3 or 4 months now that a new generation maybe needs to take over at the Port of Shelton. I'm here to tell you I'm not out of gas yet. And if I'm reelected, you can see a lot more of what you've already seen.
And Ginger Brooks.
Thank you. I just would like to say how much I appreciate being able to have this opportunity to serve my community that I love so much. 27 years of experience in that office, I think, will help me to face the challenges that are ahead. Everybody knows that we're dealing with those budget issues, and I always say, dealing with a budget is like paddling upstream in your boat. That's the bad news. The good news is there's a lot of really good people in this county in that boat with me, and we're all paddling as fast as we can to get to where we need to be. And I say need to be, not necessarily where we want to be, because sometimes that's just not the issue. We're just going to have to work together, and I'm just thrilled to be a part of that whole situation. So thank you.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the League of Women Voters and of Olympic College and our community, we thank you all for being here this evening, for sharing your interests, your questions, and for your dedicated public service. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.